If you've been following women's basketball lately, there's one name that's impossible to ignore: Caitlin Clark. She's not just a player, she's a sensation, a force of nature on the court, and someone who has completely redefined what it means to be a star athlete. Her rise to fame wasn't overnight. It was built game by game, shot by shot, and moment by moment. But once Caitlin joined the Indiana Fever, everything changed. For her, for the team, and even for the entire NBA. From the very first time she stepped onto the court with the Fever, Caitlin made it clear that she wasn't here to play small. Every time she touched the ball, fans leaned forward in their seats, holding their breath. Would she sink another three-pointer from way beyond the arc? Or would she thread an impossible pass through defenders to set up her teammates for an easy bucket? No matter what happened, Caitlin delivered something unforgettable every single time. Her style of play is unlike anything people have seen before. She doesn't just rely on raw talent. She thinks 3 steps ahead, reading the game like a chessboard. Opposing teams quickly realized they couldn't stop her, not without doubling or tripling up on defense. But even then, Caitlin found ways to shine. When defenders closed in, she'd whip the ball across the court to an open teammate, creating scoring opportunities out of thin air. It wasn't uncommon to see arenas erupt in cheers after one of her no-look passes led to a buzzer-beating layup. But Caitlin's impact went far beyond stats and highlight reels. She brought energy to the Fever that had been missing for years. Fans who hadn't paid much attention to the team suddenly found themselves glued to the TV, watching every game. Attendance at home games skyrocketed, and road games started feeling like Fever home games because so many people showed up just to catch a glimpse of Caitlin in action. Social media feeds were flooded with clips of her best plays, and hashtags like Caitlin Magic trended almost weekly. What really set Caitlin apart, though, was how she carried herself off the court. She didn't just talk about wanting to win championships. She spoke passionately about growing the game of basketball, especially for young girls. In interviews, she'd share stories about practicing late into the night as a kid, dreaming of moments like these. "I want kids to know that if you put in the work, anything is possible," she'd say with a smile that lit up the room. That sincerity resonated with people. Parents told stories of their daughters asking for Caitlin jerseys instead of dolls. Teachers noticed students drawing pictures of her during art class. Even casual fans who didn't follow sports closely felt drawn to her story. As the Fever season progressed, Caitlin became more than just a player. She became a symbol of hope, determination, and breaking barriers. People saw her as proof that women's sports could captivate audiences just as powerfully as men's sports. Broadcasters began comparing her to legends like Michael Jordan and LeBron James, not just because of her skills, but because of the way she elevated everyone around her. And while Caitlin remained humble about all the attention, those close to her noticed how much it fueled her drive. After tough losses, she'd stay late at practice, working on her footwork or perfecting her shooting form. During team meetings, she encouraged quieter players to speak up, reminding them that their voices mattered too. Coaches marveled at how she balanced being a leader without overshadowing anyone else. "She makes you want to be better," one teammate said in an interview. "Not just as a player, but as a person." By the halfway point of the season, Caitlin's influence had rippled far beyond the Fever organization. Other players around the league couldn't help but take notice. Some admired her competitive fire. Others envied the chemistry she had with her teammates. But everyone agreed on one thing: Caitlin Clark wasn't just changing the Fever, she was changing the face of women's basketball itself. Little did anyone know, this was only the beginning. What happened next would send shockwaves through the entire sports world and turn Caitlin Clark's journey into something no one could have predicted. It started with a whisper, a rumor that no one really believed at first. Rumors are common in sports, after all. Players talk about switching teams all the time, but it's usually just speculation. This time, though, it wasn't just talk. One morning, fans woke up to headlines they never expected to see. A veteran star player had officially requested a trade to join the Indiana Fever, and not just any player, one of the most respected and accomplished guards in the league. The dealer News came out of nowhere. The player explained that she wanted to be part of something special, something bigger than herself. She talked about how Caitlin Clark was redefining what it meant to play basketball and how inspiring it was to watch her lead the Fever. "I've been in this league for years," she said during an interview. "I've won championships, I've made all-star teams, but there's something different about what's happening in Indiana. It's not just about winning games. It's about making history. I want to be part of that." At first, people thought it was a fluke. Maybe the player was looking for a fresh start or trying to revitalize her career. But then, another name popped up. Then another. Within days, 9 more high-profile players, each with their own impressive resume, submitted trade requests to join the Fever. Some were still in their prime, dominating the league year after year. Others were seasoned veterans who could bring leadership and experience to the table. Every single one of them cited the same reason: Caitlin Clark. Social media exploded. Fans couldn't believe what they were seeing. Comment sections filled up with debates about whether this was good for the league or if it would create an unfair imbalance. Analysts scrambled to make sense of it all, breaking down stats and speculating about which trades might actually happen. Meanwhile, other teams grew nervous. How do you compete when suddenly everyone wants to play for your rival? For the players requesting trades, this wasn't just about chasing rings or padding their legacy. It was deeper than that. Many of them spoke openly about how Caitlin inspired them, not just as athletes but as human beings. They admired her work ethic, her fearlessness, and her ability to lift those around her. "She doesn't just make you want to be better on the court," one player wrote in a heartfelt Instagram post. "She makes you believe in yourself off the court too." Of course, not everyone was thrilled. Some coaches and general managers felt blindsided. They'd spent years building their rosters only to have their best players suddenly asked to leave. Owners worried about losing ticket sales and sponsorships if their marquee names walked away. In locker rooms across the league, tensions rose. Players who stayed loyal to their current teams faced questions from reporters about why they weren't asking for trades too. It was chaos, but it was also fascinating. Back in Indiana, the Fever organization tried to stay focused. They knew this kind of attention could easily become overwhelming. For a franchise that had struggled in previous seasons, the sudden spotlight was both exciting and intimidating. Team meetings turned into strategy sessions. Coaches worked overtime to figure out how to integrate so many potential new pieces without disrupting the chemistry they already had. And through it all, Caitlin remained calm and grounded. She didn't seek out the attention, but she understood why it was happening. When reporters asked her about the trade requests, she smiled softly and said, "I'm just doing my job. If people see something in that and want to join us, that's amazing. But at the end of the day, we're here to play basketball and to do it together." Her humility only added to her appeal. Fans loved her even more for staying true to herself despite the growing hype. As the days went by, the situation became impossible to ignore. Broadcasters dedicated entire segments to discussing which players might realistically end up in Indiana. Fantasy leagues lit up with predictions about how the Fever's roster would look by the end of the season. Even casual fans found themselves sucked into the drama, wondering if this was the beginning of a basketball revolution. But behind the excitement lay real challenges. Not every trade request could be granted. There were salary caps to consider, team dynamics to protect, and egos to manage. Some players wouldn't get their wish no matter how badly they wanted it. Still, the sheer number of requests spoke volumes about Caitlin's impact. She wasn't just a rising star anymore. She was a magnet, drawing the best talent in the league toward her orbit. And as the Fever prepared for their next game, the buzz only grew louder. Could this unprecedented wave of interest actually lead to a super team? Or would it all fall apart before anything concrete happened? No one knew for sure, but one thing was certain. Caitlin Clark had changed the game forever, and the rest of the league was scrambling to keep up. The Indiana Fever's front office wasn't built for this kind of chaos. Sure, they'd dealt with trades before, every team does, but nothing like this. Normally, trade requests trickle in here and there, a quiet negotiation behind closed doors. This This was a tidal wave crashing over them, one they weren't sure they could handle. Tamika Catchings, the Fever's general manager, found herself at the center of it all, a legend in her own right. She had spent years building her reputation as someone who could navigate tough situations with grace and smarts. But even she looked overwhelmed as she sat in her office, staring at spreadsheets filled with player, salaries, cap space calculations, and potential roster combinations. Her phone buzzed nonstop with calls from agents, owners, and league officials. Every conversation seemed to start with the same question: what are you going to do? Catchings knew that making the wrong move could cost the Fever dearly. In too many big-name players might sound exciting on paper, but basketball wasn't just about collecting stars. It was about creating a cohesive unit. Chemistry mattered more than anything, and disrupting the balance they already had with Caitlin Clark could backfire spectacularly. Still, saying no to these kinds of opportunities felt almost impossible. These weren't average players asking to join. They were legends, champions, and future Hall of Famers. Turning them down would mean passing up a chance to make history. The pressure didn't stop with logistics. Sponsors were calling daily, eager to capitalize on the Fever's newfound popularity. Merchandise sales had skyrocketed since Caitlin joined, and adding more star power to the roster promised even bigger profits. Fans flooded social media with their opinions, some demanding the team go all in while others warned against ruining what made the Fever special. It was a delicate balancing act, and Catchings knew one misstep could alienate either side. Inside the locker room, things were quieter, but not by much. The current players tried to stay focused on practice and games, but whispers about potential. New teammates spread quickly. Some were excited at the idea of playing alongside household names, imagining how unstoppable they could be. Others worried about how their roles might change or whether they'd still fit into the team's plans. Even Caitlin, who usually stayed above the drama, couldn't help but feel the weight of expectations growing heavier each day. One afternoon, Catchings gathered the coaching staff and ownership group for an emergency meeting. The room buzzed with tension as everyone shared their thoughts. One coach argued that they should prioritize younger talent, keeping the core group intact so Caitlin could continue developing naturally. Another insisted they seize this rare opportunity to build a super team capable of dominating the league for years. Ownership hesitated, torn between wanting to win now and ensuring long-term stability. Amidst the debate, Catchings spoke up. "We can't lose sight of why this is happening," she said firmly. "It's not because of our facilities or our city, it's because of Caitlin. She's brought us this far, and whatever we decide has to keep her at the center of it." Her words silenced the room. Everyone nodded, agreeing that Caitlin needed to remain the heart of the team, not just as a player, but as its soul. Outside the organization, the rest of the WNBA watched closely. Rival teams bristled at the thought of losing their best players to the Fever. Coaches grumbled during press conferences, accusing the Fever of manipulating the system. Owners privately lobbied the league to step in, arguing that allowing so, many high-profile moves would ruin competitive balance. But deep down, they all understood the real issue. Caitlin Clark had shifted the landscape of women's basketball, and no rulebook could fully account for that. As days turned into weeks, the Fever began taking small steps toward addressing the situation. They reached out to agents to gauge seriousness levels, negotiated preliminary terms with interested parties, and mapped out contingency plans if certain deals fell through. Each decision came with risks, but Catchings reminded her team of one thing. This isn't just about this season. It's about building something sustainable, something that lasts. For Caitlin, life carried on much as it always had. She showed up early for practice, stayed late to work on her game, and kept encouraging her teammates. If anything, the swirl of attention only strengthened her resolve. During a quiet moment after practice, she pulled Catchings aside. "I trust you," she said simply. "Whatever happens, I know you're doing what's best for the team." Those few words meant everything to Catchings. In a time of uncertainty, Caitlin's faith gave her the clarity she needed to push forward. And yet, despite all the planning and strategizing, The biggest challenge remained unanswered. How do you say yes to greatness without losing yourself in the process? As the Fever prepared for their next game, the question lingered in the air, unanswered but impossible to ignore. For now, the focus stayed on the court, but off it, the wheels of change were turning faster than ever. When the Fever's front office started seriously considering the trade requests, they quickly realized it wasn't going to be as simple as signing papers and shaking hands. The rest of the league had something to say about it, and they weren't holding back. Owners, coaches, and even players from rival teams were up in arms, accusing the Fever of creating an unfair advantage. Some called it basketball bullying, while others labeled it a power grab. Whatever you wanted to call it, one thing was clear. The Fever had stepped into uncharted territory, and not everyone was happy about it. The first sign of resistance came when one of the league's top teams flat out refused to negotiate. They didn't just decline. They made it public, releasing a statement that read like a warning shot. "We're not here to dismantle our franchise for someone else's benefit," the statement said. "Our players are part of this team, and we intend to keep it that way." Fans of that team cheered the decision, but others saw it as petty and short-sighted. Social media lit up with arguments, hashtags, and memes, mocking both sides. It was turning into a full-blown drama, and the Fever were at the center of it. Other teams followed suit, digging their heels in and refusing to budge. One coach went so far as to tell reporters, "If they think we're just going to hand over our best players because Caitlin Clark is fun to watch, they've got another thing coming." His words sparked heated debates on sports talk shows, where analysts argued over whether loyalty to a team mattered more than giving players the freedom to chase their dreams. Some pointed out that professional sports had always been about winning, and if players believed joining the Fever gave them a better shot at championships, who could blame them? Others countered that dismantling successful teams would only hurt the league in the long run. It wasn't just the teams pushing back. Fans of rival franchises felt betrayed too. Imagine being a die-hard supporter of a team for years only to see your favorite player suddenly asked to leave for greener pastures. Loyalty, once a cornerstone of sports culture, seemed to be crumbling right before their eyes. Season ticket holders canceled their subscriptions, merchandise sales dropped, and attendance at games began to waver. For some franchises, the backlash was manageable. For others, it threatened to spiral out of control. But the Fever weren't backing down either. General Manager Tamika Catchings addressed the growing tension head-on during a press conference. Standing behind a podium, she spoke calmly but firmly. "This isn't about poaching players or breaking up other teams," she said. "It's about respecting the choices athletes make for their careers. If someone wants to join us because they believe in what we're building here, then we have a responsibility to listen." Her words struck a chord with many, but not everyone was convinced. Critics accused the Fever of exploiting Caitlin Clark's popularity to create a monopoly. They argued that stacking the roster with all-stars would ruin the competitive balance of the league, making games predictable and boring. "What's the point of watching if you already know who's going to win?" one fan tweeted. Others worried that smaller market teams would suffer, unable to compete with the Fever's newfound allure. Amidst the controversy, Caitlin herself tried to stay above the fray. She didn't engage in Twitter wars or fuel rivalries during interviews. Instead, she let her play do the talking. On the court, she continued to dazzle, leading the Fever to victory after victory. Off the court, she focused on staying grounded, leaning on her teammates and coaches for support. When asked about the backlash, she shrugged it off with a smile. "People are passionate about basketball. That's what makes this game so special," she said. "I get why there's pushback, but at the end of the day, I'm just trying to play my best and help this team grow." Behind the scenes, though, the pressure mounted. Agents representing the players requesting trades grew impatient, threatening to take drastic measures if their clients' wishes weren't met soon. Some floated the idea of sitting out games until they were traded, while others hinted at retirement, if no deal materialized. The stakes kept rising, and the Fever found themselves caught between honoring the spirit of competition and seizing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. For the league office, the situation became a delicate balancing act. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert issued a statement reminding everyone of the importance of fairness and integrity. While player movement is a natural part of professional sports, she wrote, we must ensure that it happens within the framework of rules designed to protect all teams. Her message was clear. The Fever couldn't simply bulldoze their way through negotiations, no matter how appealing Caitlin Clark's presence might be. As weeks turned into months, tension simmered, but never boiled over completely. Deals remained stalled, with neither side willing to give an inch. Meanwhile, the Fever pressed on, determined to prove that they could succeed regardless of external noise. Practices grew more intense, strategies more refined. Players bonded, overshared adversity, knowing that every game carried extra weight now. Winning wasn't just about points. It was about proving doubters wrong and showing the world why Caitlin Clark's vision for the future was worth fighting for. And yet, despite the resistance, the Fever's resolve only strengthened. They knew they couldn't please everyone, but they also knew they couldn't ignore the momentum building around them. Every roadblock only reinforced their belief that they were onto something extraordinary. As the season wore on, fans began to sense it too, a quiet confidence that whispered louder than any headline ever could. The Fever weren't just surviving the storm, they were thriving in it. After weeks of heated debates, stalled negotiations, and endless speculation, the Fever finally made their first big move. It wasn't just any deal. It was a trade that sent shockwaves through the league and signaled to everyone that the Fever were serious about building something special. They acquired one of the most respected veterans in the game, a player known for her sharp instincts, defensive prowess, and leadership on and off the court. She had been vocal about wanting to join the Fever, citing Caitlin Clark as a major reason for her decision. When the announcement came, fans erupted with excitement, knowing this was just the beginning. The trade didn't come easy. The Fever had to part ways with two promising young players and a pair of future first-round draft picks to make it happen. Some analysts called it a risky move, arguing that giving up so much potential could hurt the team down the line. But others saw it differently. They believed the Fever were making a calculated gamble, betting on the idea that adding a proven star would elevate the entire roster. And from day one, it was clear they'd made the right choice. The veterans' arrival transformed the locker room almost immediately. She brought a quiet intensity that rubbed off on everyone around her. During practice, she pushed her teammates harder than ever before, challenging them to raise their game. Off the court, she became a mentor to younger players, sharing stories from her career and offering advice on how to handle the pressures of professional sports. Her presence gave the Fever a sense of stability they hadn't quite had before, a steady hand to guide them through the chaos. But what stood out most was the chemistry between her and Caitlin Clark. From the very first game, it was like they'd been playing together for years. On the court, they seemed to read each other's minds, anticipating passes and movements without needing to say a word. In one memorable moment during their debut game together, Caitlin drove toward the basket, drawing multiple defenders before flipping the ball behind her back to the veteran, who sank a wide-open three-pointer. The crowd went wild, cheering not just for the points, but for the beauty of the play itself. It was basketball at its finest, a perfect blend of skill, trust, and teamwork. That game ended in a decisive win for the Fever, and the momentum only grew stronger from there. With their new addition leading the charge, the Fever started stringing together victories, climbing higher in the standings with each passing week. Opposing teams struggled to keep up, thrown off by the seamless way the Fever adapted to their evolving lineup. Fans packed arenas, waving homemade signs and chanting Caitlin's name alongside their newest stars. Even road games felt like home games, with Fever supporters traveling in droves to cheer on their team. As the wins piled up, so did the attention. Media outlets couldn't get enough of the Fever's story, devoting entire segments to analyzing their success. Analysts praised the front office for pulling off such a bold trade, while coaches admitted they were running out of ways to stop the Fever's offense. Players from other teams, meanwhile, watched closely, wondering if they might be next to join the growing movement in Indiana. For Caitlin, having another all-star caliber player by her side only deepened her confidence. She thrived under the pressure, delivering performance after performance that left fans speechless. Her scoring numbers remained high, but what truly impressed people was how she continued to prioritize her teammates. Whether it was setting up the veteran for open shots or finding cutters in the lane, Caitlin proved time and again that she was more than just a scorer. She was a leader. And yet, despite all the accolades, Caitlin stayed humble. After games, she always made sure to credit her teammates, deflecting praise onto the collective effort rather than individual brilliance. "This isn't about me," she told reporters after one particularly dominant win. "It's about us. Everyone is stepping up, and that's why we're winning." Those words resonated deeply with fans who loved her not just for her talent, but for her selflessness. The veteran echoed similar sentiments when asked about Caitlin. "She's the real deal," she said during a post-game interview. "Not just because of how good she is, but because of who she is as a person. Playing with her makes you want to give your best every single night." Their mutual admiration created a bond that went beyond basketball, turning them into not just teammates but friends. Back in the front office, General Manager Tamika Catchings allowed herself a small smile. This was exactly what she'd hoped for when she agreed to pull the trigger on the trade. Seeing the immediate impact the veteran had on the team validated every tough decision they'd made along the way. But Catchings knew they weren't done yet. There were still trade requests to consider, deals to negotiate, and opportunities to seize. The Fever's transformation was far from complete, but with each step forward, the vision became clearer. Fans couldn't help but dream bigger now. What if the Fever managed to land another marquee player? Or two? Could they become the kind of super team that dominated the league for years to come? Speculation ran rampant, fueled by rumors of ongoing talks with other franchises. Every game felt like a preview of what might be possible if the Fever kept adding pieces to their puzzle. And through it all, Caitlin remained the constant, the anchor holding everything together. Her humility, determination, and love for the game inspired everyone around her, from her teammates to the fans filling the stands. People weren't just watching basketball anymore. They were witnessing the birth of something extraordinary. As the season rolled on, one question lingered in everyone's mind. How far could this team go? Whatever the answer, one thing was certain. The Fever had already changed the game forever. By the time the regular season came to a close, the Indiana Fever weren't just another team in the WNBA. They were a phenomenon. The roster had undergone a dramatic transformation, with 3 more All-Stars joining the fold after weeks of intense negotiations. Each new addition brought something unique to the table. One was known for her rebounding dominance, another for her lockdown defense, and yet another for her ability to score in clutch moments. Together, they formed a unit that felt unstoppable, a perfect storm of talent, chemistry, and determination. Fans couldn't get enough. Every game turned into an event, with lines stretching around arenas hours before tip-off. Jerseys flew off the shelves faster than stores could restock them, and local businesses cashed in on the Fever frenzy, selling everything from themed snacks to custom merchandise. Social media buzzed with highlights, fan art, and memes celebrating the Fever's rise. Even people who hadn't cared about basketball before found themselves tuning in, drawn by the excitement surrounding Caitlin Clark and her teammates. On the court, the Fever played with a swagger that was impossible to ignore. They didn't just win games. They dismantled opponents, turning every matchup into a showcase of skill and teamwork. Caitlin continued to lead the charge, dropping dimes, sinking deep threes, and orchestrating plays that left analysts speechless. But what stood out most was how she empowered those around her. Every player stepped up knowing they had the green light to take risks and shine. It wasn't uncommon to see 5 different scorers reach double digits in a single game, proving that this team wasn't built around one star, it was built around trust. As the playoffs approached, expectations reached fever pitch, pun intended. Analysts debated whether anyone could stop the Fever from steamrolling through the postseason. Some pointed to their depth as a potential weakness, arguing that too many cooks might spoil the broth. Others countered that the Fever's versatility made them nearly impossible to prepare for. Whatever doubts lingered, one thing was undeniable. The Fever were the team to beat. The first playoff game arrived, and the energy inside the arena was electric. Fans packed the stands, waving signs, and chanting in unison. Players warmed up under the bright lights, visibly feeding off the crowd's enthusiasm. When the ball tipped off, it was clear this wasn't just another game, it was a statement. The Fever dominated from start to finish, dismantling their opponent with precision and poise. Afterward, reporters swarmed the locker room, eager to hear what Caitlin and her teammates thought about their performance. "It's not just about us," Caitlin said during the post-game press conference, deflecting praise as always. "It's about everyone who believed in us, the fans, the coaches, the front office. This is bigger than basketball." Her words resonated deeply, reminding everyone watching why they had fallen in love with this team in the first place. The Fever weren't just playing for championships. They were playing for something greater, a movement, a legacy. Each round of the playoffs only solidified the Fever's place in history. Opposing teams threw everything they had at them: double teams, zone defenses, full-court presses. But nothing seemed to work. The Fever adapted, adjusted, and overcame every challenge thrown their way. In the semifinals, they faced one of the toughest squads in the league, a team stacked with veteran talent and championship experience. The series went to a decisive Game 5, and when the final buzzer sounded, the Fever emerged victorious, punching their ticket to the finals. The championship series promised to be epic. Their opponent was no slouch, a powerhouse franchise with multiple titles to its name. Pundits predicted a hard-fought battle, with both teams trading blows until the very end. And that's exactly what happened. Each game was a roller coaster, filled with momentum swings, jaw-dropping plays, and moments that left fans on the edge of their seats. When the dust settled, the Fever stood tall, hoisting the trophy amidst cheers and tears of joy. But even as confetti rained down and celebrations erupted, the Fever understood that this moment was about more than hardware. It was about proving that women's basketball could captivate audiences worldwide. It was about showing young girls everywhere that they could dream big and achieve even bigger. It was about building a culture where players supported each other, lifting each other higher instead of tearing each other down. In the days following the championship, stories poured in from fans sharing how the Fever had impacted their lives. Parents talked about their kids refusing to take off their Caitlin jerseys, sleeping in them night after night. Teachers noticed students drawing pictures of the team during art class or writing essays about their favorite players. Communities rallied around watch parties, coming together to cheer on a group of athletes who represented hope, resilience, and unity. For Caitlin, the championship was the culmination of years of hard work and sacrifice. She reflected on her journey during an emotional interview, thanking everyone who had helped her along the way. Her family, her coaches, her teammates. "This isn't my story," she said, choking back tears. "It's ours. We did this together." Her humility struck a chord with viewers, reinforcing why she had become such a beloved figure. As the off-season began, talk shifted to the future. Would the Fever keep their super team intact, or would free agency and trades shake things up? Could they defend their title and cement themselves as a dynasty? No one knew for sure, but one thing was certain. The Fever had already changed the landscape of women's basketball forever. Looking back, it was easy to see how far they'd come. From Caitlin's arrival to the avalanche of trade requests, from fierce rivalries to unforgettable victories, the Fever had captured hearts and imaginations across the globe. They weren't just champions. They were trailblazers, paving the way for a brighter future for the sport. And as long as Caitlin Clark and her teammates kept playing with passion and purpose, that future looked limitless.